It's February 2022. A British journalist named Sean Langan is sitting in a stone room somewhere in the Hindu Kush mountains of Afghanistan. The walls are bare. There's no electricity. No heating. The temperature outside is 15 degrees below zero. He's wrapped in every piece of clothing he owns, and he's still shaking. He's been in war zones before. Iraq, Syria, Pakistan. But this, he later said, was different. This wasn't about bombs or bullets. This was about something far more basic and far more terrifying. Survival. He's staying with a Pashtun family in a village so remote it doesn't even have a name on most maps. The nearest town is a 4-hour walk through snow and ice. There are no roads, no phones, no medical help. And as he sits there, watching the family go about their evening routine like it's nothing, he realizes something that makes his blood run cold. If he were left here alone, without them, he wouldn't last 24 hours. Most people think they could survive a night in tough conditions. We've seen the movies. We've watched the survival shows. How hard could it be, right? Just find shelter, start a fire, wait for morning. But the reality of surviving in an Afghan mountain village in winter isn't anything like what you see on TV. It's harder. It's colder. And it's far more brutal than you can imagine. Let me tell you why you, me, and almost everyone watching this would be dead before sunrise. First, let's talk about where we are. The Hindu Kush mountain range runs through central Afghanistan, stretching over 800 kilometers. Some peaks reach over 7,000 meters. The villages we're talking about sit at altitudes between 2,500 and 3,500 meters above sea level. That's higher than most ski resorts. The air is thin. Every breath you take gives you less oxygen than you're used to. If you're not acclimatized, just walking up a slight hill will leave you gasping. Now add the cold. In winter, temperatures regularly drop to -20 or -30 Celsius. That's -4 to -22 Fahrenheit. But it's not just the temperature. It's the wind. The mountains create wind tunnels that blast freezing air at speeds that can knock you off your feet. The wind chill makes it feel even colder, sometimes reaching -40 or worse. Your body isn't built for that. When you're exposed to cold like that, your body goes into survival mode. Blood flow to your fingers, toes, nose, and ears gets restricted to keep your core warm. Frostbite can set in within minutes. Your fingers turn white, then gray, then black. And once the tissue dies, it's not coming back. But let's say you make it to the village before dark. You're cold, you're tired, but you're alive. Now what? The first thing you'll notice is the houses. They're not like anything you're used to. These aren't wooden cabins or insulated buildings. They're made of stone and mud brick, materials that have been used here for thousands of years. The walls are thick, sometimes over a meter wide, because they have to be. They're the only thing standing between you and the brutal cold outside. But here's the problem. Those walls don't hold heat the way modern insulated walls do. They absorb cold. At night, the inside of the house isn't much warmer than the outside. If it's -20 outside, it might be -10 inside. You're still freezing. There's no central heating. No radiators. No electric blankets. The only source of heat is a fire, and not just any fire. In these villages, wood is scarce. Trees don't grow well at high altitudes, and the ones that do are small and twisted. So people burn dried animal dung mixed with straw. It's called kaka in Dari. It burns slow and gives off heat, but not much. And if you don't know how to keep it going, it dies out fast. Let's say you try to start a fire yourself. You've got matches, maybe a lighter. You find some dried dung and straw. You light it. It catches. But within 10 minutes, it's already dying. You don't know that you need to arrange the fuel in a specific way to create airflow. You don't know that you need to keep feeding it small amounts constantly. You don't know that if you smother it, it goes out, and then you're left in the dark with no heat and no way to start over because your fingers are too numb to strike another match. The locals know how to keep a fire burning all night. They've been doing it since childhood. But you'd be huddled in a corner, shivering, praying for sunrise. Now let's talk about sleep. You're exhausted. You've been walking through snow all day, your body is shutting down, and all you want to do is close your eyes and rest. But you can't. Not safely. The people who live in these villages sleep in a specific way. They sleep close together, entire families in one room, sharing body heat. They wrap themselves in thick wool blankets and sheepskin coats. Some even sleep with their livestock in the same room because the animals generate heat. But if you're alone, you don't have that. You're in a cold room, in a sleeping bag that's not rated for -20, and your body temperature is dropping. You might not even realize it's happening. Hypothermia doesn't always feel like freezing. At first, you just feel tired. Then you stop shivering. Then you start to feel warm, which is a bad sign. It means your body is shutting down. You get confused. You make bad decisions. And then you fall asleep. And you don't wake up. Let's say you somehow make it through the night. You didn't freeze to death. The fire stayed lit. You're alive. But now you're hungry. And that's where the next problem begins. Food in an Afghan mountain village in winter isn't what you think. There's no refrigerator stocked with leftovers. There's no grocery store down the street. There's no DoorDash. What you eat is what the family has stored from the last harvest, and that's running low because winter lasts for months. A typical meal might be flat bread called naan, made from wheat flour. Maybe some dried beans or lentils boiled into a stew. If you're lucky, there's a bit of dried meat or yogurt. But portions are small. These people are rationing their food to last until spring. They can't afford to waste any. You, on the other hand, have no idea how to make naan. You don't know how to cook over an open fire without burning everything. You don't know which plants are safe to forage or how to preserve food without refrigeration. And if you try to eat something wrong, you'll get sick. And getting sick in a place with no doctors, no medicine, and no way to get help is a death sentence. Let's talk about water. You'd think water wouldn't be a problem. There's snow everywhere, right? Just melt it and drink it. But it's not that simple. First, you need fire to melt the snow. If you can't keep a fire going, you can't melt snow. And if you try to eat snow directly to stay hydrated, you'll make things worse. Eating snow lowers your core body temperature. Your body has to burn calories to warm the snow into water, and in a survival situation, you need every calorie you have. Even if you do melt snow, you need to make sure the water is clean. In these villages, water sources can be contaminated with animal waste, bacteria, or parasites. Locals know which streams are safe and which aren't. They know to boil water for a specific amount of time. You don't. You drink the wrong water, and within hours you're dealing with diarrhea, vomiting, and dehydration. In freezing temperatures, dehydration kills fast. Now let's talk about the thing that most people don't even think about. Altitude sickness. If you're not used to being at 3,000 meters above sea level, your body struggles. You get headaches. You feel dizzy. You can't think straight. Your heart races. You feel nauseous. And all of that makes everything else harder. Now let's talk about the thing that most people don't even think about. Altitude sickness. If you're not used to being at 3,000 meters above sea level, your body struggles. You get headaches. You feel dizzy. You can't think straight. Your heart races. You feel nauseous. And all of that makes everything else harder. You don't have any of that knowledge. And without it, you're just guessing. And in an environment this harsh, guessing gets you killed. Let's talk about what happens if you need to go outside at night. Maybe you need to relieve yourself. Maybe you hear something and want to check. In a normal situation, you'd just step outside for a minute. But here, stepping outside at night is genuinely dangerous. The cold hits you like a wall. Within seconds, any exposed skin starts to burn. Your eyes water, and the tears freeze on your cheeks. If you're not wearing proper gloves, your fingers go numb almost immediately. And if you're not careful about where you step, you could fall into a snowdrift and not be able to get out. There are stories from these villages of people who went outside at night and never came back. Not because they were attacked or kidnapped, but because they got disoriented in the dark and the snow, wandered off, and froze to death 20 meters from their own door. The locals don't go out at night unless they absolutely have to. And when they do, they tie a rope from their door to wherever they're going so they can find their way back. They know the terrain. They know where the cliffs are, where the ice is too thin, where the wind is strongest. You don't. Now let's talk about something even more dangerous. The wolves. Yes, wolves. Afghanistan's mountains are home to packs of gray wolves, and in winter, when food is scarce, they get desperate. They come closer to villages looking for livestock. Sometimes they find people instead. These aren't the wolves you see in documentaries, sitting peacefully in the forest. These are hungry, aggressive animals. A pack can take down a full-grown sheep in minutes. And if they catch a human alone, especially someone who's weak or injured, they won't hesitate. The villagers know how to protect themselves. They keep their animals locked up at night. They travel in groups. They carry weapons, usually old rifles or knives. But you're unarmed, alone, and you've probably never seen a wolf outside of a zoo. If a pack decides you're prey, you're done. Let's say you avoid the wolves. You make it through another night. But now it's day 3, and you're starting to realize something terrible. No one is coming for you. There's no rescue team. No helicopter. No emergency services. If something goes wrong, you're on your own. In the West, we're used to safety nets. If you get lost, you call for help. If you get hurt, you go to a hospital. If you run out of food, you order delivery. But in these villages, none of that exists. The nearest hospital might be a 2-day walk away, and even if you could make it there, you'd probably collapse before you arrived. The people who live here understand that they're alone. They know that if someone gets sick or injured, they have to handle it themselves. They have traditional remedies passed down through generations. They know how to set broken bones, treat frostbite, and stop bleeding. But none of it is perfect. People die here from things that would be easily treatable anywhere else. Infections, pneumonia, appendicitis, a bad fall. And if you got hurt, you wouldn't even have those basic remedies. You'd just have to sit there and hope your body could heal itself. And in freezing temperatures, with no food and no medical supplies, your body doesn't heal. It shuts down. By now, you're probably wondering how anyone survives here at all. And the answer is simple. They've adapted. Not just mentally, but physically. Studies have shown that people who live at high altitudes for generations develop larger lung capacity. Their blood has more red blood cells to carry oxygen. Their metabolism adjusts to burn calories more efficiently in the cold. But you don't have those adaptations. Your body is built for comfort, for grocery stores and heated homes and easy access to water. You're a product of modern civilization, and modern civilization doesn't prepare you for this. Let's talk about the psychological side. Because even if you somehow had all the right gear, all the right knowledge, and all the right skills, there's still one more thing that would break you. The isolation. These villages are cut off from the world. There's no internet, no TV, no phones. In winter, when the snow gets deep, even the footpaths to other villages become impassable. You could go weeks without seeing anyone from outside your immediate area. For the people who live here, that's normal. They have their families. They have their routines. They have their faith. Many of these villages are deeply religious, and that gives people a sense of purpose and community. But for an outsider, the isolation would be crushing. You'd be surrounded by people who don't speak your language. You can't communicate. You can't explain what you need. You can't ask for help. You're completely dependent on the kindness of strangers, and if they decide they don't want to help you, there's nothing you can do. And here's the thing. These villages don't have a lot of resources. Food is limited. Fuel is limited. Space is limited. Taking in an outsider means one more mouth to feed, one more body to keep warm. In a place where survival is already difficult, charity isn't always an option. There have been cases of travelers getting stuck in these villages and being turned away because the locals simply couldn't afford to help them. Not out of cruelty but out of necessity. If feeding you means their own children go hungry, what would you do? Let's say, by some miracle, you've made it to day 4. You're still alive. But you're not the same person you were when you arrived. You've lost weight. Your lips are cracked and bleeding. Your fingers and toes are numb. You can't think clearly. You're starting to hallucinate from exhaustion and dehydration. You're not surviving anymore. You're just slowly dying. And that's when you realize the truth. Survival in a place like this isn't about toughness. It's not about willpower. It's about knowledge, experience, and adaptation. The people who live in these Afghan mountain villages aren't superhumans. They're just people. But they've been shaped by this environment their entire lives. They know things you don't. They can do things you can't. And without that knowledge, you're helpless. There's a reason why, throughout history, mountain people have been some of the hardest to conquer. The Romans couldn't fully control the mountain tribes. The British couldn't. The Soviets couldn't. And even with all the technology and firepower in the world, modern armies struggle in these mountains. It's not just because of the fighters. It's because of the terrain, the cold, the altitude, the isolation. It's a place that doesn't forgive mistakes. And here's the really sobering part. The conditions I've been describing aren't even the worst it gets. There are villages even higher up, even more remote, where winter lasts longer and the cold goes even deeper. There are places where people live at 4,000 meters above sea level, where the temperature drops to -40, where the snow is so deep you can't see the ground for 6 months. And people still live there. They raise families. They tend to animals. They survive. Because they have to. Because that's their home. And they've learned how to make it work. But you wouldn't make it. Not because you're weak, but because you don't have what they have. You don't have the skills. You don't have the knowledge. You don't have the genetics. And you don't have the mindset. That journalist I mentioned at the beginning, Sean Langan, he spent a week in that village. And he had help. He had guides. He had the family looking after him. He had proper gear. And even with all of that, he said it was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. He said the cold was relentless. The hunger was constant. And the fear of knowing that if something went wrong there was no way out, that stayed with him the whole time. When he finally left, he said he felt like he'd been given a glimpse into a world most people will never understand. A world where survival isn't guaranteed. Where nature doesn't care about your plans or your feelings. Where every single day is a fight. And the people living in those villages, they don't get to leave. They wake up every morning knowing it's going to be hard. They go to bed every night not knowing if they'll have enough food tomorrow. They watch their children grow up in conditions that would break most adults. And they do it with dignity, with strength, and with a resilience that most of us can't even imagine. So the next time you think you could survive a night in an Afghan mountain village, remember this. You couldn't. I couldn't. Almost no one who hasn't grown up there could. Not without help. Not without preparation. and not without a deep respect for just how brutal that environment really is. Because it's not just about the cold. It's not just about the altitude. It's about everything combined. The isolation, the hunger, the wind, the darkness, the fear. It's about being in a place where humans aren't supposed to survive, but somehow, incredibly, people do. And they've been doing it for thousands of years. Long before modern technology. Long before heated homes and grocery stores. They've survived because they had to. Because there was nowhere else to go. Because this is their land, and they refuse to leave it, no matter how hard it gets. That's the real story. Not that you couldn't survive a night there, but that they survive every night. And that's something worth thinking about.